What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, Mr. Tad the Side. And Tad, it's been a pretty busy, eventful NFL kickoff to the NFL league year. Not even once the league year opened on Wednesday the 12th. We had a flurry of moves the weekend before with, DK Metcalf being traded and, the Niners releasing everybody and their mother. It's been pretty wild as far as the NFL week this past week.
Yeah, it's been nonsense. I still am trying to get straight. So wait, do the Jets have Carlton Davis, or did the Jets let Carlton Davis go and sign DJ Reed? All these corners are impossible to keep track of.
Yeah, DJ Reed's no longer with the Jets. I think
he's a Lion, right?
I believe so, okay. Yes.
And then Carlton Davis is a Jet.
I thought Carlton Davis was with the Patriots now.
Oh, son of a bitch. And where's Isaiah Rodgers? Because I saw Isaiah Rodgers went somewhere. Is he a Jet?
He's taking trips with the Steelers, and the Giants are on his list right now because Justin Fields is now the quarterback of the Jets.
I saw that.
And so,
yes. No, that's easy.
Yeah,
the Jets
so
signed
that is
corner.
So
there's too many. You know what? We should do day by day position. Monday, quarterbacks. That's your day. Okay. You make a move. You want to release Aaron Rodgers? You got to do it on Monday.
That would be a very interesting tactic by the league to sort of do.
The only way to keep all of this straight, because I know our viewers and listeners are like, how do you not know? It's your job to know. There legitimately been 200 moves in the last 72 hours.
Yeah, it's not just free agent signings, it's been a lot of trades as well. So, it's just been a lot of just, flurry of action, just everybody moving everywhere. It's just these teams are definitely putting themselves in a good spot before we get to the NFL draft in about a month and a half.
Isaiah Oliver, that's who I was thinking of.
Isaiah Oliver, okay, yeah. Another former Niner who's now elsewhere, obviously. There you go, just to fall into that.
Thanks for your Javarius Ward, by the way.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it as too much of a shock that he was going to leave the Niners, but the Colts picking him up, that was a little bit, I was like, awesome. Okay, Chris Ballard's actually spending some money here.
Yeah, and then he spent the money in the very much wrong way. Worst
and
quarterback
Jones
competition
is now the Colts as
ever.
Well.
Notice how I'm not wearing any Colts gear. There was a reason.
That's fair. But Tad, like we talked about, there's been so many moves, and I think this definitely affects the free agency landscape as far as, where free agency landscape as far as it affects fantasy football. That's why I wanted to speak there. So the free agency is definitely affecting fantasy football. It's also going to affect the way maybe some teams are going to attract the draft as well. So we're going to give you reactions as far as players that may have affected their fantasy stock, but either positively or negatively. So we're going to give you some reactions there. But then also we're going to give you a couple players that maybe affected teams' draft strategies once we come to the draft, like I said, in about a month and a half here, Tad. So why don't we start with fantasy football? Outside of the NFL draft coverage that we do, the rest of the season we do fantasy football coverage. So this is a good time to really look at, where players have signed as far as how this will help or hurt their fantasy stock depending on the team that they signed with. So Tad, who do you think, hurt or helped their stock the most with the new team that they have landed on? Or maybe a team that traded for a player as well. So we're not counting, just free agent signings, trades as well.
Okay, so I don't know if he tops the list as the most, because it would be very easy, right? To be Devontae Adams, who I keep on thinking it was a trade, but technically signed with Los Angeles Rams.
And then he signed with Los Angeles.
We were talking about this before the episode. Yes, I could have done that, but that doesn't make for a very interesting episode, right? Really, a Hall of Fame receiver with a Hall of Fame quarterback with a likely Hall of Fame coach is going to be fantasy relevant. No shit. So that's not interesting. I could go Najee Harris because that is a more interesting conversation, but I hate him. So no. Although there is some interesting fantasy discussion around him, which we will have later on this summer.
Oh, we certainly will.
Yes, we will. DK Metcalf to the Steelers is fascinating, especially if Aaron Rodgers ends up being the Steelers quarterback, which it seemingly inevitable at this point, but we still don't know as of recording.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, talk DK Metcalf only for them to sign like Russ again and be like, okay. So I want to go with something I know. And I know this because this duo, I've seen them in the past. I've seen them succeed in the past. And Amir, I will say this player, he's torn his ACL. He's played with one of the best quarterbacks we've seen ever play the game until apparently he ran the wrong route and cost them a game. Then the very next week, I think, he caught the game-winning touchdown for his new team. And then he did not catch another touchdown for the entire season. But Amir, I'm calling it. Mike Williams is back. Come on, show me some excitement. We have Chargers fans here. He's back.
We do. Yeah, there's some excitement there. I think that gives them a little bit more of a more solid weapon opposite of Ladd McConkey now. So, yeah, I do like this re-signing again.
Well, so I looked into it. Since Justin Herbert was drafted by the Chargers, Mike Williams, fantasy-wise, and both half and full PPR, I looked up both of them, he's averaged over 10 points a game in every season he's had with Justin Herbert. Now, I know what people are going to say is like, well, his last season with Justin Herbert, he played like 3 games. Fair enough. Well, I'll back off that one. But in the other, previous seasons, he's had almost 1,000 yards. And one, he had over 1,000 yards and at least 6 touchdowns. So we know that production, that chemistry is there. It's not like a typical wide receiver signing where I'm like, I'm not so sure how he's going to fit in that offense. DeAndre Hopkins. But it's a proven commodity. And you look at, I know what people are going to say. It's like, but Ladd McConkey is going to vulture all of his touches. When it comes to PPR, probably. Yeah, I think Ladd McConkey's unquestionable number 1 there. But who led the Chargers in touchdowns last year?
Was it Quentin Johnson?
It was Quentin Johnson. I should clarify receiving touchdowns. I should clarify before people start yelling at me. So QJ led them with 8 touchdowns. Now, unfortunately, I think this is where Mike Williams steps in and basically replaces QJ because, like I said, Quentin Johnson, I'm not going to call him a bust, but it's just that, he's coming along very slowly. I think he'll have a pretty good NFL career by the end, but Mike Williams is that, kind of proven leader in the receiving room that they need. So I think that Mike Williams is a guy, especially fantasy-wise, you can get him in the late rounds. Everyone's out on Mike Williams, right? He was terrible with the Jets. He was terrible with the Steelers. People are going to look at him and be like, nah, he's washed. He's done. I don't think he is. I think he is a very, very sneaky bench stash receiver, buy low. And now look, I'm not saying he's going to be a wide receiver 1 for your fantasy roster, but I think he could be your last position player you take in the draft and end up at the end of the season being a solid flex option at worst and low end to solid wide receiver 2 at best. So again, I don't think he tops of he did the most for his fantasy value, but I think he did play himself to be one of my favorite sleepers for next season.
Sleeper, I think, is the best word there because, I think there's a lot to sort of look at with him returning to Los Angeles to play with the Chargers again, but it's a whole new regime there. So it's like they're not going to value Mike Williams the same way that the team that obviously drafted him would.
They won't, but Justin Herbert will.
No, I'd like to think so. I think you sort of see that chemistry already that they had previously. So it's like they sort of build that up again. So it's like naturally, I think playing with a receiver that you played with before, that should obviously make things a little bit easier in that passing offense. Also, I just like that passing offense look a little bit more now because you could put Mike Williams at one of the outside positions. You could put Quentin Johnson at one of the outside positions. Now you move Ladd McConkey to the slot. I think that gives them a lot more firepower as far as the passing game is concerned to really just, make defense really question as far as who's the guy that's going to be the main target of this offense now, right? So it's like, once you get to the red zone, is that going to be more Mike Williams or it's like, will they move, Ladd McConkey on a quick drag route or whatever? It's just it gives you a lot more options. So it's I like the freedom that they could possibly take now with, the addition of Mike Williams. And it really, I think, puts Quentin Johnson into a better spot as well, where it's now he's not the main option anymore. He could sort of be that second or third option, which I think, like you said, takes off a little bit of that pressure as well. And I think maybe he could start to build up on his career a little bit better there. So yeah, I think for the Chargers, it's a great move. I think it's really just going to improve their offense a ton. But as far as fantasy is concerned, I think, sleeper is probably the best category there because we talked about before, Jim Harbaugh is definitely a run-first guy. So it's like, there's a
Greg
reason
Roman
why
too.
they went after Najee Harris. We're not going to spend a ton of time on Najee Harris now. We'll save that for a later episode. But just like, I think they're still going to stick with the run more. And then, so it's like, I don't know how much I see this passing offense being as, dynamic as maybe you're hoping for it to be. But very much like as a dart throw at the very end of your draft, if you need a guy to be as like, you know what? If this guy pans out, I barely had to pay any sort. I didn't have to invest a high draft capital for him. And he's, like you said, being a very good late season addition with all those injuries that eventually pile up or whatever it is, streaming option, I could very much see that happening. But I think sleeper is the best category for Mike Williams to the Chargers.
And I could even see him being a priority free agent too. I could see him going undrafted in a ton of leagues as well. So it's an interesting name to keep an eye on, especially in training camp. Because you're right, it is a new offensive system. But if those reports start coming out like, "Ooh, Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, looking like that little combo," usually I call BS on those training camp reports. But I'm going to be very interested. And I mean, imagine if the Chargers draft Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. All of a sudden, that is one of the more complete offenses in the entire NFL. And I say Colston Loveland because you stay away from my boy Tyler Warren. Don't you touch him. Jam. It's Jim, right? Is there John? I always get them confused. Jim and John. You know what? Both of them, because Mark Andrews is on the hot seat too. Both of you, stay away from Warren.
Yes, because that will alleviate all the Colts' issues is by drafting Tyler Warren.
It will alleviate one.
Oh goodness. Ted, I'm gonna give you a free agent here that I think hurt their fantasy stock. Like I think I viewed him a little bit higher depending on where he was going to land, but I think him landing in his new team, this one I don't like the fit at all. That is Sam Darnold signing with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm not a huge fan of this one. It was very interesting. So, I mean, he signed a 3-year deal worth $100.5 million with $55 million in guaranteed money. This comes to after the Seahawks shipped off Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders. So it was pretty much they made this move and they already had a plan in place. That's like, we want to bring in Sam Darnold to be our quarterback. But I think this is where, like I said, his fantasy stock takes a hit for me. It's because they traded away DK Metcalf, which we talked about a little bit earlier in the episode here. They traded away him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also released veteran wide receiver Tyler Lockett. So there goes 2 of your starting wide receivers. I know Jaxson Smith-Njigba had a fantastic season last season, but it's like outside of him, I have a lot of question marks as far as who you could trust in this passing offense as a whole. Like, I mean, not just receivers, but it's like they have a lot of question marks at tight end as well. Noah Fant has not emerged as that leading tight end that we thought he was going to be coming out of Iowa. So it's like a very concerned about what they're going to do there as well. Here's the big one too. Their offensive line has some big issues. I remember, Tad, you caught a lot of flack. You caught a lot of flack when you brought this up, like I think maybe a year ago. But there's a lot of optimism there because they had some good rookies there with Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross. But Charles Cross has been healthy, but Abraham Lucas has been hurt pretty much all of last season. They had a very Frankenstein type of offensive line this entire year. I think they had very few players. I think they only had 2 offensive linemen out of their 5 that played all 17 games of the season. So it's just, I think they have a lot more issues on their offensive line. They have some issues in the weapon for the weapons as far as their passing game is concerned. So I don't know if Darnold is going to see the same success that he saw in Minnesota because, I brought this up in an episode before where it's just like, everything went so well for Minnesota. That's just like everything lined up so well for Sam Darnold to have the season that he had. He finished as the 9th best quarterback in fantasy football last season. He eclipsed 4,300 yards passing, and he had 35 passing touchdowns. Both were career highs for him, but that defense played at another level. Like I said, that offensive line was able to correct him, but he was able to play with Justin Jefferson, who had an amazing season. Jordan Addison had a really good season for him as well. They had DJ Hawkinson at the tight end position. So to not have all those weapons on offense and then to not have as good of a defense to back him up, it worries me about just how good this offense is going to be. Plus, I think making a move for Sam Darnold, they've already sort of said that's like Sam Darnold is sort of our guy temporarily while they find out who their future is going to be at the quarterback position. So it's like they already know that this is not their long-term answer. So it's like that is also a little bit telling to me too, that I think they're going to lead more on the running game. So it's like they already have Kenneth Walker III. They have Zach Charbonnet. I think they may lead more on the run game. And Sam Darnold will just have to do enough of this offense to just not let this team, get themselves into bad situations. So it's like I can very much see this situation just, being okay for Sam Darnold. But it's like, previously, I remember I mentioned it before. That's like, I thought that maybe he'd land with Las Vegas. He'd be with, Pete Carroll, former USC head coach. So it's like, I thought maybe there'd be a little bit better connection there. So I thought maybe landing there would give him a little bit more potential to be more of that offense. So it's like, depending on how they drafted, how they attacked free agency, they had the second most cap space. So it's like, I thought they'd build that offense a lot more and build it maybe around him. But him going to Seattle, like I said, just this whole situation just worries me quite a bit as far as just how good he can be. Because, yeah, I very much see it as like, before, maybe he would have been a fringe top 10 fantasy quarterback again based on the season that he had. But him landing at Seattle, he is very much a backup quarterback option now. Or, Tad, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes undrafted in a lot of leagues. Because, just I just don't like his situation in Seattle.
I would be shocked if he was drafted in most leagues. But real quick, before we get into the fantasy implications, because I could not believe this. I don't know if it was today, but I saw a picture of it for the first time today of his introductory press conference. So not only do you ship out DK Metcalf, arguably the best, I don't even think it's arguable, the best Seahawks receiver in franchise history. Did you see they gave his number 14 to Sam Darnold?
I did see that.
That is a slap in the face to DK Metcalf. Not only do you trade him away, I know DK requested it, but still, then you go, all right, one of the fine. I saw you be like, best receiver, one of the best players in franchise history. Yes. And you give it to Sam Darnold.
Yeah, that was definitely that's pretty cold. Like literally instantaneous. Like I saw the social media post too, where it's like they replaced the number very quickly. I was just like, wow, yeah, that was like, yeah,
because you know that 14 is gonna get retired in like 10 years. They're gonna retire number 14. Oh, come on, they are.
No.
14. All right, bet. 14 and 16 retired numbers within 10 years. Well, okay, within 10 years of retirement.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right, we'll see. Bet.
Yeah, I'll take that bet.
Right, well, we'll try to think of something. But no, in terms of fantasy, I'm right there with you, like on every point, which is to see it's almost sad. That's a lot meaner than I mean it to come out to be, but like it's like the Seahawks are trying to stay competitive. It's like just tear it down. Man, like you had a good run in the 2010s. You had a great run in the 2010s. 2 Super Bowls, won one of them. But man, it's just like they're trying. It's like the Titanic trying to stay. Wow, that's the first Titanic reference. I've gone weeks with that one.
It still doesn't matter. That's been your go-to for like the past couple months.
Well, yeah, like, I don't know what it is. Because so many teams in the NFL are just sinking ships. It's not my fault. But it's like they're just trying to stay afloat, and Darnold's not the guy that'll keep you afloat. He's just not that good. Because like you say, he can be good. I'm not saying Darnold's terrible, but he needs a support system that's no longer there. His number 1 receiver now is Jaxson Smith-Njigba, and I'm 90% sure I'm taller than him.
It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I love JSN. Like, I think he's a fantastic receiver, but
he is, but he's not number 1.
That's the thing that worries me more. It's just like they don't have anybody to supplement him with. Right? Whereas, like I said, Justin Jefferson was there. They had Jordan Addison. They had TJ Hawkinson. Aaron Jones was a better pass catching running back as well. So it's like they had a lot more chances for Sam Darnold to find success wherever the open receiver was. Whereas in Seattle, like I said, it's JSN. It's like that Will Smith meme where it's like it's just him. They posted that so many times.
Yeah, just like
he's in that empty room just looking around. It's like, yeah, I really don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I think the draft is definitely going to be critical for them as far as who they add to supplement to give Sam Darnold more weapons. Maybe they go for the second wave of free agency and they pick up some guys there. Who knows? Maybe they take the recently released Cooper Kupp. Maybe they add him as well. But so that's going to be very interesting to see how they give Sam Darnold more weapons. Because as of right now, the way the roster looks, like I said, it does not make me want to draft Sam Darnold in my fantasy leagues, respectively.
How about this for a fantasy hot take? I would take Justin Fields in a fantasy draft over Sam Darnold.
That is bold, but I like it. That is bold, but I like it.
Get the rushing touchdowns, better support
system. It's purely because of the rushing element. It's purely because of the rushing element. Because if the Jets put him in a situation where they're not going to block for him like they have done in the past 5 years,
I think that's why they signed him.
He can get out. He'll just get out and he'll rush for touchdowns. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's like I can see that very happening. So yeah, like I said, it's bold, but I like it. I'm on the same side as you for that one for sure.
Honestly, I don't even think maybe you could talk me into touching Kenneth Walker, but other than him, I don't know if I'm touching anyone on Seattle's team this fantasy season.
I think for the same reason that you've always said before, what's your favorite target when it comes to what's your favorite stat line when it comes to receivers is targets, right? Volume share. So because he's purely going to get a ton of volume going to him, I definitely would want to draft Jaxson Smith-Njigba, like, purely because of the volume.
He's going to get hurt, though. You cannot throw at that guy like 100 times. He's not big enough. He's going to get murdered.
No, it's possible. So it's like, but I'm drafting him, and then it's like I'm taking insurance behind it. But Tat, we're still months away until fantasy draft prep, so we'll get to that a little bit later there. But yeah, so I do agree with you. Kenneth Walker the third, JSN. I think those are the two guys that have targeted the offense as of right now, as of recording. We'll see what sort of other moves they make through the rest of free agency as well as the draft. And Ted, speaking about the draft, let's transition into the draft here as far as like what sort of moves, whether they are trades, whether they're free agency, whether it's just a massive amount of releases like the Jaguars did, and like I mentioned, the Niners did, as far as like, who do you think affected their draft strategies the most, where it's like, you can either lock in a player where they're going to draft, you can sort of lock it as far as like what positions they're going to target, just sort of moves they're going to make, but just like what sort of cleared up maybe a little bit the draft picture for you, maybe with the move that a team made.
So before I give you my pick, and you're actually going to like this, okay. I saw two almost back-to-back tweets, same scrolling session, where the first one I saw was the Philadelphia Eagles, because, I mean, you want to talk about teams that got gutted. They lost a lot of defensive players. The offense is still okay, but that defense is going to be interesting. They have something like 20 picks in the first 4 rounds over the next 2 years.
Yeah.
It's like, I hate them. And then I was like, how does that happen? Like, how? That's not fair. And I, like I said, same scrolling session. So I cursed the Eagles and kept scrolling. And then I saw a picture of, nice smiling John Lynch. I'm like, oh, what now? And the tweet said that you guys, the 49ers, who have also been fairly gutted this offseason, you have something like 15 picks in the first 4 rounds over the next 2 years.
Yeah. They're playing the comp pick game for sure.
Hate you guys. Hate you. That's how good teams say good.
And that's exactly why, like, there's a lot of casual Niner fans out there that's just like, this is going to be a terrible season next year. But it's like, I think they're planning towards, becoming more sustainable over the next couple of years instead of giving out these big contracts. And so maybe this coming year will be rough, but it's like long term, they're trying to keep that window somewhat open. And so it's like, that's why they're making the moves that they're doing.
And the reason why I'm laughing is like, you guys be like, oh, this is a terrible season. 9-8. And that's why we hate you, because your roster is still pretty good. Like, I think you guys are pretty solid, but I mean, you're going to be like, you know what? Welcome to Colts land, where you're just going to be in the hunt, like that graphic. You're going to be like in the hunt for like 8 straight weeks and just be like, I don't, maybe. So yeah, welcome to hell, buddy.
It'll be a very interesting season for sure.
Ridiculous. Like you're cheering for the Dolphins to tie randomly and just all this shit. It's awful. Anyway. You want to talk awful. Let's talk about this team that actually made their draft plans very clear. This was my initial reaction when I saw they made this one move. And I texted you this and you agreed with it. It was the Raiders, the terrible, terrible Raiders trading for Geno Smith. Shocked me. I did not see that.
It was quite shocking, yeah.
But once I started thinking about it, it made a ton of sense. Because, well, one, I forgot Pete Carroll is now a head coach again, which is just hilarious. That man is going to die on the sidelines. He's like 75.
He is. But hey, if you're keeping yourself in good health, then you can still coach for another 5-10 years, possibly.
Just check that blood pressure at halftime. But it made sense, right? Because Pete Carroll obviously has experience with Geno Smith. He was a big part of that redemption arc for Geno. And so it made, and we were kind of talking about this on the company Slack. I don't know if you saw this earlier today, where I think it was Kerry was talking like, well, why are the Browns not going to draft a quarterback? And I said, right, because there's can't miss prospect in this year's draft when it comes to a quarterback. And that's what the Browns need. Kind of the same deal with the Raiders. The Raiders need a can't miss prospect. So, and there's not a prospect like that in this year's draft. So go with the evil you know. Like, Pete Carroll knows what he's getting with Geno. And by the way, I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners have heard this stat, but this is also insane. Is Geno is behind only like Patrick Mahomes and one other quarterback for the most comebacks over the past like 2 years. He's a good quarterback. He's not great, but he's a good quarterback. So, okay, the Raiders have their quarterback situation figured out. That means they don't need to move up for anyone. You keep the draft capital. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, we need receivers. Yeah. Jacoby Myers is good. Don't get me wrong. Jacoby Myers, is it Meyer or Myers?
Myers.
Multiple Myers. Okay, gotcha. He's good. So I'm not taking anything away from him, but you need to add more than that. Of course, Brock Bowers is there as well. You could go offensive line. Yeah, I think you have bigger needs. So I decided to look into it, which is also crazy, by the way. In the 13 years, Pete Carroll was Seattle's coach. Just that sentence alone is insane. He started coaching in Seattle in 2010.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. But anyway, I looked it up and I actually went year by year by year. In 9 of those 13 years, Seattle running back finished in the top 5 in rushing attempts in 9 of those 13 years. Obviously, most of those were Marshawn Lynch, had a couple years off. How about this for a throwback name? He came back with Chris Carson.
Chris Carson,
How
yes.
about that for a throwback? So Pete Carroll loves to run the ball.
Yes.
And I know what Raiders fans are going to yell at me. We have Raheem Mostert. Shut up. I hate Raheem Mostert. Nothing against him personally, but the hype around him drives me crazy. I'm like, he's really good. He had 18 touchdowns last year. Yeah, he also has only eclipsed 1,000 yards once his entire career. Do you want to guess how many yards he had that season?
I guess he like maybe 1,100, like he barely got over.
Worse, 1,012.
What the?
He got over 1,000.
There you go.
Like
got
12 points.
Yeah.
He's not bad, but he's not a true number one. And by the way, a lot of this hatred comes from for the non-Madden players out there. Did you ever buy the new Madden? So when you do the My Player,
yeah,
the player progresses from prospect to rising star to superstar to legend. Well, in the superstar for running back, and as you do that, they show you running backs who are already there. So superstar for running backs, one of them is Josh Jacobs, which is fine. That makes sense. And the other is Raheem Mostert. Superstar, really, EA? We're calling him a superstar. Point being is the Raiders need their back in the future. Cowboys, I'm sorry. Bears, I'm sorry. Yes, Broncos. I never really thought the Broncos were going to get him, but still. Broncos, I'm sorry. Ashton Jeanty is for sure. Did I do it right this time?
Genty. You're saying Jeanty again.
Damn it. Ashton is going to be a Las Vegas Raider. 100%. And it's perfect because, like I said, now they don't need to move up from 6 because no one in that top 5 is going to take Ashton. And even more, as long as you stay in front of the Bears, so if you trade down to 9, they can actually trade down 2 or 3 spots and kind of gather up some more draft capital for someone, I don't know, like the Colts, who may trade up for Tyler Bourne. I'm just saying. Or Ted McMillan. I could see, well, we don't really need receiver. I don't need
receivers. Surprisingly, that is the one.
I know, that's the one. Well, running back too. We're good there for now. But I think that Genty, especially with the Geno Smith trade, it just makes so much sense of just let's focus on the offense. We will build up this defense later. Especially I thought re-signing Kuntz was a massive get for them. I did not think they were going to get, and they got him for really cheap too. I think they got him for less than 10 mil, which was shocking. So I think that they and obviously they locked up Max Crosby. So it's all right, our defense weak but kind of set. Let's focus on this offense. So I think Ashton Genty.
Yes, there you go.
There you
got
go.
that one right.
See, yeah, third time's the charm. I think he is an absolute lock to be a Las Vegas Raider.
Yeah, 100% agree with this one. I think it makes it so much more clear that Genty, I think, is going to be the pick here at number 6 because I don't know if you remember, Ted, but when we did one of our initial top 10 mock drafts, I had Genty at number 6, and you kind of scoffed at me. You were like, really? I don't think that's going to be the case.
I didn't scoff at you. You were like, oh, this is a hot take. And at the time, that was everybody's draft hot take.
I guess that's fair. That's fair. But I think this literally solidifies. We've talked about this in the past where when you look at a lot of mock drafts, there's usually one player that somehow gets mocked to this team every single time. Yeah. I think with the move of Geno Smith, I think Ashton Genty gets locked into this spot at number 6 overall, unless we see some shifting around, like you said, where it's the Raiders starting to move back, or it's some team moves ahead of the Raiders. That could possibly be in play there. That it possibly will not be Genty at number 6, but yeah, I could very much see them leaning more heavily on the run game and focusing this offense with Genty and then supplementing it with Jacoby Myers moving the ball down the field, and of course Brock Bowers being the player that he is. The only thing that I could sort of say maybe throws a wrench into plans is if they want to supplement that receiver room, then I could definitely see Ted McMillan out of Arizona being the pick there. But I do think they go skill player here, whether it's Genty or whether it's McMillan. I think it's one of those guys, but I'm heavily leaning towards Genty for sure.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's McMillan, but I think it should be Genty because this running back class is very, very shallow. It's Genty, and then why am I blinking on it? It's 10:30 my time. Hampton, is that the UNC guy's
Omari
name?
And Hampton, yes.
Yeah, Hampton. Those are really the only two starting potential backs in this year's draft, in my opinion. With receiver, it's not much deeper, but it's deep enough where you can get a solid talent in rounds 2 or 3.
Yeah, see, I see the receiver position and the running back position being kind of similar. So it's like, it's very top heavy. So it's like, you got your Amari Hamptons. Ashton Jeanty is like in a tier by himself.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Then it's like you got Amari Hampton and Caleb Johnson at Iowa. Those are probably like the next guys. In my opinion, Cameron Scadable's in that conversation too, but that's a discussion for a later episode. But just like, the rest of those guys is like, there's a lot of potential there, and they may not be day one starters like your Johnson and Hampton and Jeanty, but it's like they could develop into starters like maybe as the season progresses. Definitely by year 2 or year 3, they can be starters for you. Where it's the same thing with the receiver position. It's like, you got Ted McMillan, you got Luther Burden III, you got Emeka Ibuka, you got Matthew Golden. So it's like those 4 guys, but then it's like outside of that, it's a lot of guys where it's just like a lot more just like, they could develop into pretty quality, good receivers. Maybe you develop into future stars in the NFL, but it's not going to be day one production that you're going to see with a lot of those guys. It's like, I see the running back and receiver class being sort of mirroring in that sense there. So it's like, there's a lot of hope there, but just like, like I said, with Jeanty being in a class by himself, it's like you take that type of prospect because you're not going to get a guy like that every single year. Right.
Well, and it's not even like, a guy like Luther Burden, I could see, kind of slipping into like the late 20s. And then all of a sudden, if you're like, if you are the Raiders and, oh man, this would be a crazy good draft if they got Jeanty and Burden.
That would be pretty insane.
But like they're receivers who could slip. And then it's draft day. Then you make you call up that pancakey motherfucker and you trade back into the first round and then you get, your second guy. Jeanty's not going to slip.
No.
I'd be shocked if he got past the Bears at 10. I would say I'd be shocked if he got past the Cowboys at 12, but I'm pretty sure Jerry Jones is senile at this point, so I don't know what he's going to do. Someone is going to take Jeanty before the 15th pick. So it's now or never at number 6.
Yeah, no, I 100% think that he's probably the smarter pick there with the draft capital and the talent available at that position. He's probably the smarter pick. But like I said, I think we're both in agreement that's like, it wouldn't surprise us if McMillan ends up being the number 6 overall pick too. So it's like, we will see what happens there for sure. But Tad, this may shake up the top 5. It may not shake it up for Ashton Jeanty specifically, but I think with some of the moves that have happened for this team, I think there's a clear decision that's like they're going to move up and take the number 1 overall pick. And that is the New York Football Giants. I think some of the moves that they have made in free agency here and some of the lack of moves, like, they tried to get on some moves that just didn't happen. I think very much it's painted a clear picture that's like they will be the team that trades with the Tennessee Titans to get that number 1 overall pick, because Titans have a lot of holes to fix on their roster. Giants, surprisingly, yes, they're bad, but they actually have some players on their roster that's like they can sort of make do. Whereas like the Titans sort of need to overhaul a lot of things there.
By the way, the Giants, low key, one of my favorite. Like I can't believe it's not being talked about more. But and you absolutely called this in our last episode, one of the best signings of the offseason so far. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it actually, I don't know.
I literally just discovered this yesterday. Again, you absolutely called this because I was like, there's no way this goes underreported. Javon Holland signed with the Giants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he did sign with the Raiders, which I predicted, but he signed with the Holland with the Giants here, which I got to get to in just a second here. But clearly, Ted, we saw the New York Giants were trying to upgrade their quarterback position because they were in play for Matthew Stafford. There's a lot of talk about him possibly being traded there. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. He re-signed with the Los Angeles Rams. They were in the mix for Sam Darnold. There's a lot of talk about him possibly going to the New York Giants there, hilarious. And whether it was going to be the Giants or possibly a reunion with the Jets. It didn't happen. We obviously talked about it. He signed with the Seattle Seahawks. They were a possible destination for Justin Fields, but Justin Fields signed with the other New York team. He is a member of the New York Jets now. So clearly they're trying to upgrade the quarterback position because obviously they didn't get it figured out with Daniel Jones, who is now a member of
them tomorrow.
So I'm going to get to that. So it's like, obviously, Daniel Jones no longer on the team. He's now a member of your Indianapolis Colts to battle Anthony Richardson. But right now it looks like the front runner for them is Aaron Rodgers. He's sort of weighing his options of whether it's going to be the New York Giants, whether it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's sort of like those are the two options there. But regardless of whether he signs with the Giants or not, they need to figure out their long-term solution because Aaron Rodgers will only be a 1 or 2 year stopgap solution until you figure out that next guy, right? So it's like they definitely need to figure out who that next guy is going to be. Then you look at their free agent signings this year. They signed Paulson Adebo, the cornerback for this New Orleans Saints. Terrible. And like you talked about, they signed Javon Holland for the Miami Dolphins as safety. Upgraded their secondary there. Both players combined, they signed for a shade under $100 million for both of those players. Then you look at their defensive line. They signed Rory Robertson-Harris. They signed Johnston Golston, both 3-year deals. They upgraded their defensive line that way. Then they re-signed Darius Slayton on the offensive side at the wide receiver position. I know a lot of people were sort of giving the Giants slack because he signed a very similar deal, which apparently they offered to Saquon Barkley, but Saquon Barkley walked, or that's neither here or there, but just like saying
that will haunt that franchise for a very long time.
But they re-signed Darius Slayton to give Malik Neighbors a running mate there, so it's like they got some good weapons on the outside there. But currently the Giants hold the number 3 overall pick, and I think the jump from number 3 to number 1, Ted, is not going to be as steep as like jumping from when the Niners traded from number 12 to number 3 overall to draft Trey Lance. They gave up 3 future first-round picks, right? They gave up the current and then 2 future ones plus a couple additional picks. So it's like I don't think the asking price is going to be as big. I decided to look back at history to see how steep of a price you had to ask for a sort of quasi-similar jump here. So it's like 2001 NFL draft. The Chargers acquired Tim Dwight, the wide receiver, the number 5 overall pick, number 67 overall pick, and a 2002 second-round pick from the Atlanta Falcons for the number 1 overall pick. Do you know who that number 1 overall pick was?
LT, baby.
It was not LT.
You said 2001.
2001, the Atlanta Falcons traded for the number 1 overall pick.
Oh, they traded with the Chargers. My bad. I thought you said the Chargers traded up.
The Chargers had the number 1 overall pick, and they traded to the Atlanta Falcons.
I'm going to guess Michael Vick.
It is exactly Michael. Out of?
Virginia Tech.
Very good. So
weirdly, one of those schools I have no reason to hate, but I hate them. What the hell is a Hokie?
Yeah, I don't know. Some sort of weird turkey
like the
thing.
Hoosiers. What's a Hoosier? It's like the sound you make when you sneeze. Hoosier!
But it's like, Ted, you look at that compensation there. It's like, they threw in a player that was like, pretty good for the Falcons, but then it's like pretty much all of your draft capital was gone just in that 1 year in 2001. And then you gave up the second round pick next year. So that's not too bad of an asking price to jump up from 5 to 1, right? Let's go back a little bit further. Let's go to the 1999 draft here. So let's look at the Los Angeles, and then the St. Louis Rams. My mistake here. The St. Louis Rams.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. Too used to Los Angeles, right? So just a force of habit here. So jumping back to 1997, my mistake here. The Rams acquired the number 1 overall pick from the New York Jets. So they jumped up from number 6 to number 1. They gave up the 6th overall pick, a 3rd round pick, which became number 67 overall, a 4th round pick, number 102 overall, and a 7th round pick, number 207 overall. So all of their trade happened in just that one draft. Got to keep all their draft capital in future years. Who did the Rams trade for?
Is that Orlando Pace?
That was the Orlando Pace selection out of
Ohio State, I believe.
Exactly. Yes, he was out of Ohio State. So once again, not a huge compensation there. It's like obviously you swap first round picks, but then it's like you gave up a 3rd, a 4th, and a 7th. So it's like, like you said before, I think teams value draft picks a little bit too much in the NFL. But this sort of thing, just to move up a couple of spots to get to number 1 overall, I think the Giants would be very smart to do. Last one that I want to bring up here. Go back to 1995. The Carolina Panthers had the number 1 overall pick. They traded to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals were able to acquire it for the number 5 overall pick and a 2nd round pick, number 36 overall pick. So that is a very good move as well. You only gave up 2 picks. You gave your first 2 round picks, but you got a 1st overall pick in return. So it's like you just missed out on a 2nd round pick, and you got to move up from number 5 to number 1 overall. So who did Cincinnati select with that number 1 overall pick?
Was that Akili Smith?
This is the one that I think might have stumped you. I figured you'd get the other two, but this is the one.
It was that running back. I remember because I stumped you guys.
It is a running back, so
I stumped you guys with this trivia like 3 years ago on draft night when what was his name? Because I had never heard of him. And then when I stumped you guys, you and Ryan Dyrud were like, "Oh yeah, that guy." I was like, "I don't know." I know it's not him. This is a total joke answer. Cedric Benson.
It's definitely not Cedric Benson because the Bengals didn't draft Cedric Benson either. The Bears drafted Cedric Benson anyways. Kajana Carter out of...
I did Nebraska?
Nope.
Colorado.
Penn State.
Damn it.
He was a Nittany Lion. So, yeah. So, it's like, you look at that 95 draft. I know that was obviously, close to 20 years ago now. But, it's like, they only gave up a first round, like a top 5 pick and a 2nd round pick, and they were able to move up to number 1. So, it's like the Giants can very much make a very similar move where it's like the asking price, like I said, to go to 3 to 1, I can very much see it being in somewhere in this realm where it's like, it's not going to ruin their future as far as draft capital is concerned, but they can move up to number 1 to jump ahead of Cleveland, because that is the biggest conversation point right now. What is Cleveland going to do at number 2 overall? Are they finding their successor for Deshaun Watson? They're going to move off him, but even if Deshaun Watson is still part of the plan, it's like they need somebody to play quarterback this year, because
they
he's not
have
going to play.
Kenny Pickett.
He signed with Cleveland, or he got traded to Cleveland because he said that he is going to be in the running to start for the Cleveland Browns. So it's like, yeah, you joke about that, but it's actually true.
My boy's back, baby.
But we'll see about that. But just like, regardless, they need to figure out a long-term solution. So they're very much a domino as far as like, is that where quarterbacks are going to go? Are they going to go best player available? Are they going to take a chance on the injured Abdul Carter? It's like, are they going to go with the dual threat Travis Hunter? It's like, there's a lot of different directions they could go. But with the possibility of them going quarterback, I could see the Giants leapfrogging them and eliminating from the conversation. They get a chance to take whichever quarterback they want, whether that's Cam Ward, whether that's Shedeur Sanders. We'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. Probably a big discussion in our future episode, Tad, here. But I think they make that move because, like I said, just looking at past history, that asking price is not going to be too cheap. Is not going to be too steep, excuse me. It's going to be cheaper. And I think the biggest thing, they want to eliminate all sort of cloudiness as far as whether a quarterback will fall to them. They want to take the best quarterback available.
Couple things on that. Well, 2 things. So one, let's assume they sign Russ, or let's even say Aaron Rodgers. Do you still think that should be the move they should make?
I think so, because like I said, whether it's Russ or whether it's Aaron, 100%.
Aaron's gonna be pissed.
He would, but it's like I said, I can only guarantee like maybe 1 or 2 years with one of those veteran signings, because it's like, maybe with Russell Wilson, I could maybe argue against making that type of move. But Aaron Rodgers, if he signs with the Giants, I still very much am in support of them making this type of move.
I agree that they should do this. It makes all the sense, as we just spent the past 10 minutes breaking down. Here's my one concern. The Titans have been very quiet at quarterback this offseason.
That's fair.
It's really frustrating a lot of Tennessee fans, rightfully so. But that tells me there's someone they like in this draft. That tells me that they're very content on, you know what? We don't want anyone out there. We got our guy in this draft. If it's Shedeur, I can see this trade happening, because I don't think Cleveland's going to go quarterback. I think that they traded for Pickett. Russ just finished up visiting Cleveland. Cleveland's still in the quarterback market. I think it's going to be a 3-way battle. Well, not really a 3-way battle because Deshaun's hurt. I think they're going to bring in some competition for Kenny Pickett. So I think Cleveland's going to take Abdul Carter. That's my guess. Maybe Travis Hunter is a marketing thing, but whatever. So if Tennessee really likes Cam Ward, this trade's not going to happen. But if it's Shedeur they like, 100%, why wouldn't you do this if you were Tennessee? Because then, exactly like what you pointed out, you don't get a ton of draft capital, but you still get some.
Some
extra draft capital, and for
you stay in the top 5. You stay in the top 5.
You get Shedeur. If the Tennessee front office is like Shedeur, Cam, it's like 1A, 1B. Fuck it, then take the extra draft capital. If Shedeur sucks, move on. But that's my one concern with this trade is if they're in love with Cam Ward, no way they're moving off that first overall pick.
You make a ton of sense there for sure. Yeah. If they're very much, set on Cam Ward being their franchise quarterback, then yeah, I really doubt they move off of number 1. But yeah, I can very much see a situation where it's like I said, I think they need to replenish more of their roster. So I can see them making a move here.
They do. That's not even an opinion. That's just fact.
So I could see them very much being in conversation to possibly move that pick. But yeah, like you said, they've been very quiet on that front. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they're like, nope, we have it all set. We're taking Cam Ward, or maybe they're very much in love with Shedeur Sanders. And it's like, yeah, they want to stay at number 1 and take him too. So it's like, yeah, we really have no idea what some of these teams do. Obviously, we got that big surprise with Michael Penix Jr. at number 8 overall last year, right? So you really just can't predict the draft sometimes. As much as people like to do mock drafts and make these predictions, you have no idea what is going to happen. It's a total crapshoot. But that is the fun of the NFL draft, guys.
That is why it's Christmas in April, baby.
And I think that is the biggest sticking point for us, for all of you guys that are listening and watching us, is that this is the time to interact with us when it comes to the NFL draft. All these free agency moves, on all the flurry of decisions that happen, it's like we'd love to hear your thoughts. Hit us up on those social media handles, guys. You got us on Twitter. You got me at OnTheSide23, 10 Side 94. Got the show handle at The Side Guys, and of course on Instagram at The Side Guys as well. So Let us know what are some of your favorite free agency moves when it comes to fantasy football. What do you think some of these teams are going to do with the NFL draft because of some of these moves as well? Who got overpaid, who got underpaid, who's your favorite free agents that are still out there? Just all this talk there, guys. That's the best way that you can sort of interact with us, get our thoughts as well. We'd love to cover everything on all these podcast episodes, but we just can't get to everything that we want to. That's a good way to get us our attention as far as what we should focus on with future episodes as well. Like we talked about, the draft is just getting spicier now, guys. So a month and a half out, we're going to hear a lot of rumors and storylines as far as Titans are possibly shopping here. Or it's they got a visit from Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Which direction are they going to go? It's we're going to hear a lot of crazy conversations here. I can
already see that happening. Good God.
Pro days are right around the corner as well, guys. So we're going to see lots of these players work out there. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders did not throw, and neither did Cam Ward at their respect at the combine. So we'll see them perform at their respective pro days. Was it good? Was it bad? We'll have all of that coverage for you guys as the month and a half progresses for you guys, leading up to our NFL draft live stream. So make sure you tune in for that as well, guys. But please make sure you subscribe or listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And please, please, please make sure you're supporting our parent network at LAFB Network, because they're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers and all of their free agent wheelings and dealings, as well as the Bruins and the Trojans at the college football level. I think we're, maybe a month and a half out from spring games. So they got you covered with all the transfer portal madness, all the roster decisions. We've talked about it before, but is Lincoln Riley on the hottest hot seat in college football? Maybe that's being discussed on LAFB Network right now. That's the best way so you can check out on all that's happening there. But guys, it is not just football anymore. We are about 2 weeks away from MLB action. If anything, Tad, next week is the Tokyo series between the Cubs and the Dodgers.
Oh my God.
So that is where you can get your Dodgers coverage. Exactly. The Tokyo series is happening. So you got your Dodgers coverage there, as well as the Angels coverage when that begins at the end of the month. And then, of course, with the NBA approaching its final month and a half of the regular season, as their march towards the playoffs as well, they got your Clippers and Lakers coverage as well, guys. So they got you covered on all the big three sports there. Pretty sure they'll have some Kings hockey pretty soon. I'm very, very sure in the near future as well. So make sure you're supporting them, because without them, there would be no us. Lots of great content coming from a lot of great content producers. But to everybody who's already interacting with us on social media, who's dropping good YouTube comments, who's listening to our episodes, who's watching our episodes on YouTube, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we cannot thank you enough.
And Amir, we did not talk about another massive event that happened this week. Do you know what went down this Wednesday?
I do not know.
USC Pro Day. Pro days are
the Pro Day already happened. Yeah, the Pro days have already started.
15 Trojans participated in the USC Pro Day this week. And if you want the full recap of, who stood out, who could have done a little better, and especially which teams these guys should go to for optimal success, to check out the Salute to Troy podcast, hosted by the very knowledgeable and person, Al Rowe. But for the latest on USC, especially not just guys going in the draft, but also how the team is shaping up to look next year in the Coliseum, be sure to check that out. His podcast is wherever you find ours, as is the LA Podfidential podcast, hosted by a very good friend of the show, Chauncey Talese. I mean, you want to talk about teams that have had a massive week. A lot of shit's gone down for the Rams.
It has.
This has been a pretty big. Did you see Puka change his number?
He did. He's going back to his college number 12.
Yeah. Biggest news for the Rams this week.
Yeah, one of them.
So if you want all the latest reactions on the Rams, and especially, like we said, the draft is heating up. So what do the Rams do? Because they could go in 1,000 different directions.
They can.
Be sure to check out LA Podfidential. And again, those are only two of the podcasts among a bunch that LAFB Network has. So be sure to check it out wherever you can find your podcast. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and even YouTube. Most of the podcasts can be found on the YouTube channel as well. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And please stay safe.